All right, green light means we are live. So back for another episode of the Fight Science podcast. Now, we've got another return guest from the esteemed Trifecta team who works very closely with our good friends at the UFC Performance Institute. We've got Chef Mario Limaduran joining us again. Chef Mario, thanks for coming on.
What's up, Jordy? Thank you so much. You're so good at that intro. How you doing?
Hey, I've done it a few times, so get lots of practice in. I'm doing real good. Mario, the reason I want to get you back on, we've been going back and forth. We talk all the time, but for the people who are big UFC fans, UFC just went through probably one of the most monumental, most epic events to ever happen, UFC Fight Island. So I want to get you back on. I want to talk about Fight Island. I want to talk about from your perspective, because for the people who haven't listened to our last episode, Chef Mario is the chef behind the UFC Performance Institute Nutrition team. You're the guy that's feeding, you're turning all the numbers into legit, realistic food, and that's a huge task. Before we get into all that, Mario, can you give us a recap just for the guys, say if they didn't get the chance to listen to our last episode together, just give us a brief rundown about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on your podcast again. This is exciting. So much has changed since we first spoke, man, since the first podcast. There's been so much evolution, and with COVID and everything, we've had to grow at a rapid pace. So a quick summary, my name is Mario. I am the executive chef at Trifecta. Trifecta is the official partner of the UFC, meal delivery partner of the UFC. We have a 5-year contract and we're going into year 3. We provide the culinary nutrition side of things. We work in conjunction with the UFC Performance Institute, all the dietitians there, and pretty much bring, like you were saying, the nutrition philosophy to life. So how I say it is I put the nutrition, philosophy words into practice, into food, created into food, so that we can feed and support the athletes in making weight and in rehydrating properly, so they can be at their peak performance come Saturday. So that's a good summary, I think.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't do justice to how much work actually goes involved with this, because I guess nowadays as well, especially with COVID and everything happening, you guys are quite literally supporting every single athlete on the card that's coming through. Yep. So what's that? Anywhere between 22 to 26 athletes every week?
Yep. Anywhere between those two numbers. And it's exciting, right? When we first started 2 years ago, people never heard of Trifecta. There was no people weren't aware, there was no awareness behind it all. And so when we first started, we were serving 8 athletes, and now we're serving 26. And because of the craziness of Fight Island, and we'll get into that in a second, we were feeding 55 athletes at once. Like one chef was feeding 55 athletes at once. And granted, I mean, we did that in Jacksonville too, and it was 22-hour days, and I'm not even kidding. Like 1 week I worked 200 hours, or I clocked in 210 hours, something like that. It was absolutely ridiculous. But because of the level of detail, the level of work that we're doing, and because we have a crazy situation in the world going on, we've been blessed with the opportunity to be able to feed everyone, and I think that's incredibly special.
You just mentioned that there, Mario, that you were actually clocking in at 22-hour days, and that I'm pretty sure is not legal anywhere where I live or any state around here. But hey, you got to do what you got to do. Hey, but obviously with the demand, and obviously the service has grown so much, you guys have had to grow the team. Can you tell us what's going on in that front?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just hired an executive sous chef. Her name is Skylar Hanka. Her and I went to school together, Johnson Wales University. So we both have a classical culinary training, but also the culinary nutrition bachelor's degree. She's currently getting her master's degree in integrative nutrition and becoming much more well-rounded in the nutrition world, something I really admire of her. And we took the one class that we needed to take for all of this to happen years later, athletic performance cuisine at Johnson Wales. And I was impressed with her level of skill and just where her mind was at. And we kept in touch over the years. And about 4 or 5 months ago, I gave her a call. We caught up, and I was looking for a sous chef, offered the opportunity, and she interviewed very well, and she got hired. And aside from interviewing well, we've been training her not only a Trifecta aspect, because, you know, Trifecta in itself is a business and we do a different job there, but with the UFC aspect, when we were in Vegas, we trained together. I trained her for 4 weeks and she got up to speed with everything. And we went to Abu Dhabi. I went to Abu Dhabi first, did the first week solo. She got there, did the whole quarantine thing, and then we got ready for the next couple of days. So it's exciting. You know, we've grown. We're still growing. There's plans to hire more people. And from what used to be a one-man show, now it's becoming a very sustainable practice.
Yeah, it's quite the operation now. Now, you mentioned it a little bit there, quite the show that is Fight Island. Let's talk about that before we get into all the logistics of how you make that beast happen. What was your initial response when you heard that? When you heard Dana talking about it? When you heard the company saying, "Hey, we're going to book out this island and get all the international fighters there"? What was going through your head knowing that you had to feed this whole operation?
Well, it's you know, it was interesting because internally I knew it was Abu Dhabi and Jacksonville. So there were the rumors, internally we get information ahead of time. So, you know, Jacksonville was a monster of itself, even though it was 3 fight cards. There was still that overlapping week, and athletes can be quite needy at times. So that sort of prepared us for it. And I was on embedded, and you know, I briefly spoke about it, how we were getting ready for it. But you know, it was, as the time went on and as we found out how it was all going to be organized, it sort of got a little more daunting. You know, it was like, okay, this is going to be a massive mountain to conquer. And it was, you know, on a personal level, it was, there's certain situations in life that mark, you know, that mark humans as something big or a very special situation. And this was it for me, because it was from the planning, you know, talking to the chefs and making sure that we had everything, that we could order everything, planning all the sourcing of the food through the hotel, planning the schedule of sleep cycles for the athletes, planning what we were going to cook, all the way to executing it and making sure that my team, that Skylar, was set up for success while she was there. You know, it took 3 weeks of prep just for that. And then Fight Island is still happening as we speak, as we record this. So what was going through my head? Well, I mean, 1, exciting. 2, well, awesome, I get to go back to the Middle East. And 3, gotta make it happen, you know.
RIP any sleep over the next month was probably the next thought that went through your head. Let's talk logistics.
Yeah.
Chef Mario, logistics. Like you spoke a bit about the planning. I don't know how deep you're allowed to get into it, but let's talk about, like, how does this come from conception of an idea, and how does it come to be, okay, Fight Island, where you're feeding all these athletes, having overlapping athletes? What's the plan? How's it all work? What happens there?
Yeah, no, I can definitely, I'm more than happy to talk about the behind the scenes. I actually recorded a lot of this, so I'm going to be releasing behind the scenes footage on my YouTube channel. Small shameless plug in there. But it was like I said, 3 weeks worth of planning, you know, of just conversations, like email chains like you would not imagine. We were dealing with, you know, the executive level of the UFC, the lawyers who were dealing directly with the Department of Tourism and Culture of the UAE. So all of the sourcing was going through the Department of Culture, Tourism and Culture. So from a planning perspective, it was very sort of executive level, right? And I was the one in charge of putting the entire list of food that we would need for the entire 3 weeks. We planned the fighter quarantine menu directly with the hotel. We planned how that was going to get delivered. We went through a 48 quarantine period, and that's what I was referring to, the fighter quarantine menu. So we wanted to start feeding the athletes as soon as they landed, with the philosophy, of the UFC PI, so that they can, we can support them in making weight even during that quarantine period. So this went on. It was a slow progression, right? And while we were in Vegas, we were planning all this. And it was just this, it was very overwhelming, to be completely honest. It was just kind of like, well, what about the schedule? What about the media schedule? What about, are we going to be quarantined for 48 hours, or are we going to be quarantined for 5 days? Like, how is that going to work? Are the athletes going to have workout rooms in the rooms? How are we going to organize ourselves? So figuring all those details, and it was information that needed to come from, from that corner, and we needed to go all the way to the mountain to get an answer from somebody else. Like, it was that sheer level of communication that needed to happen within the UFC, and it took days. So for 3 weeks we were just emailing back and forth, planning, making sure that we had all details set, and with the idea and the understanding that once we got to Abu Dhabi, we planned as best as we could, but the reality of the situation on the ground completely different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big saying of mine, is always plan for plans to never go the way you want them to. But
that was exactly what happened.
yeah, Mario, what happened? So you locally sourced all the food, is that correct? And obviously you had to project and forecast how much, like how's that process work? You just work out each individual athlete? Are you in contact with them and go, okay, well, this is a likely number that we'll need for amount of food? How does that all work?
Yeah, well, no, we're not in contact with them until they check in into the hotel. That's when Charles and Clint do the check-in, and that's when we interact with them. So based on the nutrition philosophy that the UFC has, the UFC PI has, I have an average of a serving size per athlete, right? And it varies, of course, depending on the athlete, whether they're heavier, whether they're lighter. So I made an estimate of how much we would potentially need, and added 20% on top of that, just in case. And so it was requested of us to send, the entire list of ingredients that we would need, with the entire quantity for all 3 weeks. And so I just put this massive document together with the help of Skylar, and we sent it over to the UFC for approval, and then it was sent off to the Department of Tourism and Culture, who eventually pays the hotel for the sourcing. So it's this massive sort of circle, and we end up getting the food. And what was crazy is because we were in a bubble, they needed this order ahead of time, so that they can make bulk orders and have the food delivered, 3 times, rather than having multiple orders delivered at multiple times. Because in the bubble, people were tested, and nobody from the outside could come in that was not tested. So all the employees that were in the different hotels within the bubble, or that still are there, all the UFC people, all the athletes, all the corners, everybody got tested. And so, we still had to walk around with masks, but there were still procedures and protocols. We still had to get tested every week. But because of that, the hotel and the UAE, the UFC said that we would only get a certain amount of deliveries every week, or every so often. So planning ahead, we had to do that to source the food. And of course, it wasn't the case. We had to actually source food quite often, and get extra deliveries here and there. So yeah, that's how that went.
All right. Well, let's talk about the next phase when the guys do come in. They're onboarding. Obviously, Clint and Charles are doing their onboarding, and then you're getting that information. Talk us through, like, what does that first couple days look like for you once the athletes arrive?
So as I mentioned, as soon as we landed in the hotel, we were quarantined. We were received with the entire hotel staff in full HACCP suits, just like top to bottom, completely wrapped. Which it was crazy. It was kind of like a scene out of a movie. And so we went to the testing room, got tested, and then we went to rooms, and we were quarantined for 48 hours. And the hotel took care of delivering like I mentioned, meals that were planned by us. It was the UFC Trifecta and the W Hotel that planned the meals for the fire quarantine menu. And that's how we were feeding the athletes. But for everybody else, we can just order room service, and they would leave the food in front of our door, and we would just pick it up, open the door and pick it up. And 48 hours is quite a bit of time when you're stuck in a hotel room with not much to do. You know, you can only do so much. And because of that nature, the nature of that period, and because I flew out with the first group of athletes from the United States that were going to fight that week, you know, the moment I got out, I started working. Like I got my wristband at 2 a.m, like slept under the door at 2 a.m, and I woke up immediately because I needed to get going. So pretty much a month. It was Tuesday of fight week, and that's typically that's check-in day, right? And so on Tuesday I had to do my prep, my mise en place for all my food. Typically in the United States we have the trifecta proteins already cooked that are shipped to the hotel. In this case, you know, everything was raw, so I had to cook proteins, sauces, snacks, auxiliary items, garnishes, everything. I had to plate the food for that day for the 26 athletes, and then I had to plate the food for the next day. So in one day, I did the job of 3 days, the work of 3 days. And while Charles was onboarding athletes, he had actually onboarded athletes in his room the day prior, which was smart of him. You know, it made my job a lot easier. But at the same time, it was super lengthy. And the hotel gave me 2 or 3 cooks who helped me do all this work. Without them, I probably wouldn't have been able to finish the work. So it was crazy, man.
How does that work if athletes are arriving at different times, Mario? So say that initial lot came in and then another lot came in, they have to quarantine for 48 hours as well, and then they come and get the service, or do they have the quarantine menu only available to them, or how's that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's been happening throughout this time. So it depends. Their feeding depends on when they're fighting. So perfect example was Masvidal, right? So Masvidal arrived like 3 days prior to his fight. We have a previous relationship with him. We've cooked for him several times, and Charles reached out to him and his manager, and we were ready for him. So in that case, when we have a previous relationship with an athlete, we're able to be in a conversation, know their weight, and prepare those meals. But in order to stagger our service, we divided all athletes who were on quarantine would receive for those 2 quarantine days the fighter quarantine menus that were prepared by the hotel. So we were in the same kitchen space, and the hotel prepared those meals. They took them down to the in-room dining cooler, and then there was a runner that would go up and deliver the meals whenever the athletes would wake up. And for the athletes that were out of quarantine and when they were a week out from their fight, so they were in an actual fight week, we would start feeding them. If an athlete was there earlier than, so they had like Ramiro who fought yesterday, he was there for 2 weeks. So he got fed the fighter quarantine menu for 6 or 7 days, for pretty much a week. And then we took care of his nutrition and started feeding him. But you know, we did that so that we weren't overwhelmed, even though it was overwhelming by nature. And it helped quite a bit. But you know, the sheer level of requests and just the sheer level of calls and text messages and details that happened during that week was absolutely crazy, man. I've never been under so much stress in my life, and I don't say that lightly. It was absolutely insane.
Yeah, in fact, and another thing that pops to my mind too, Mario, is the fight weeks I've been involved in. Like, it's very free flowing, but you guys are super accommodating. Like, you guys, if you ring up and say, "Hey Mario, can we get an extra this?" or "Hey Charles, can I get some water?" You guys are extremely accommodating. You make all that happen. How does
Yeah.
that work in your sense? If they call up, 2 questions: how does that work, and how do you accommodate for that? And how does the food actually get to the athletes? Are they coming down and collecting it, or did you have like a whole system in place to get the food to them, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so again, it depended whether the athlete was in fighter quarantine or in that quarantine period. and whether they had tested positive or negative, right? So far, nobody who is in Fight Island has had a second or third test positive. They all been negative, which was a safety precaution by the UFC, right? But if there was a special request, or if there was a lot of confusion. Athletes weren't really understanding who they had to call for their food, if they still had to call the in-room dining service so that the hotel could take care of them, or if they would contact Charles or myself or whoever to get the food delivered to them. So it again depended what time they were in their fight week. And if they were in quarantine, then the hotel staff would run the food to the door, still fully covered, and knock on the door and then leave for the athlete to retrieve. If not, Charles or myself would go up, and by the end of the first week, we changed our system. So we had a system for the first 5 to 6 days, but it was too much stress having to run to all the rooms, right? So we changed the system, and then we had athletes come down to the office where they would pick up, or a corner of them would pick up the food.
Yeah, awesome. So you said you made that adjustment there. Were there any other major adjustments that when you were there in the moment that you guys planned for, and then you just went, hey, this is just not working the way we thought, like let's do X, Y, and Z? What were some of those things?
Well, that was one of the big ones, major ones. The other one was the back end organization, understanding who needed the food from the hotel and who needed our food, the Trifecta Fight Week food. So with the hotel chef Yvette, this amazing lady, she created a sheet so that we could understand who we were feeding, and who they were feeding. And every day we would go over that list and refresh it and see if somebody had gone to our list, or if we weren't feeding them and they were going back to the hotel's list. Room numbers was a big thing. It's such a big issue, man, because athletes could have 2 or 3, especially main card athletes could have 2 or 3 room numbers because of the teams. Like Alex had three room numbers, but he was on 1708 when his managers and coaches were in 1707 and 1706. So understanding where the athlete was a massive headache too. And then they would jump between rooms, and the athlete would call from one room to the other. So we had to start writing the actual room numbers in the bags so that we can over communicate to the hotel where the food needed to get delivered. Even like weigh-ins was another sort of crazy situation. We got to weigh-ins, and security was just being difficult because, from my experience, they just wanted to be difficult, and they wanted us to throw all the food away and all the rehydration away.
What?
We were not being allowed to enter with food or rehydration. So we were like, no, we can't do this. So we had to negotiate. Like Charles went into this crazy mode. The security person just helped us out. And for some reason we forgot food in the hotel. So we had to go back to the hotel, get the food, adjust, just like sheer amount of details that were falling through the cracks was insane. So those are some examples on how we constantly adjusted, and everything with COVID has been changing minute by minute. So every day, every hour, there was something else that was coming up that was not working. But those 2 situations are the ones that, I can talk about it from top of head.
What were you guys doing, like, as a team, like between yourself, Clint, Charles, all the other chefs involved, all the other cooks? Were you guys meeting like 2-3 times a day, every hour? Were you checking in with each other? Were you having an end of day debrief? Like, how do you set that up so everyone's on the same page and you wake up after your 45 minutes of rest and then go, okay, today we're going to do this. How does that work?
Yeah, so no, we didn't have debriefs. It was so pretty much we had a bunch of, and I'm still getting text messages from Abu Dhabi. We had we have a Trifecta UFC text messaging group. We had a WhatsApp group that was the UFC PI, the hotel staff, and the Trifecta team. and we were communicating through those mediums. We made requests through the WhatsApp group. Any private requests we did through the Trifecta UFC group. And then we would send emails back and forth of any sort of requests that we needed that were a little bit on the higher executive side. And it was constant sort of running up and down and running into the chefs or going to the office with Charles and Clint and talking and figuring details out. Just because we needed to, and it was sort of we created so many documents. Like I pretty much had a book of papers at one point with all the details that we needed to go through. And it was cross-checking each other's work and cross-referencing the work that we had done for ourselves. That's pretty much how it ended up working out at the end of the day.
And can you talk to us about, obviously that sounds stressful enough, just doing it quarantine, different times for the same card, and then you're obviously transitioning from the quarantine menu to the fight week menu. But then you guys had that really weird spot where it's like you have that fight card on the Saturday and then you had that other fight card on the Wednesday or something. So you've got the double cards.
Yeah.
How does that work? How does that even work out from your guys' end?
That's a great question. So it's doing the job of 2 days in one, right? So with Chef Skylar in the picture, it was a lot easier because I had a very capable chef that understands the system helping me out. And it's in the morning we would plate the food for the next day. So let's pretend today was weigh-ins and tomorrow was athlete check-in day as well for the next card. So we would get the food ready for the fight that was going into fight day. And to add an extra layer of detail, we were actually cooking 4 or 5 meals because they're fighting between 2 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning, right? And so let's say for Alex, who was one of the main events, fighting early in the morning, like we had to cook 6 extra meals because we're not only feeding them throughout the night, we're feeding him breakfast at 4 o'clock in the morning and possibly an extra meal later on before his fight. So it was 5-day food times 2. So it was a double sort of 5-day. And then it was cooking for the athlete check-in day in the afternoon. So we at one point we cooked, I think, 220 meals and I don't know how many snacks in one day. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're actually there plating all this food, you're plating, 50 breakfasts, and each breakfast it's different. Each breakfast has a different serving size. So it gets pretty heavy, So that's how that worked out. So we would just cook for one card, finish it off, bag it, and then start cooking again for the next one.
And Mario, just to reiterate that point, this isn't like, say, if you're cooking 50 breakfasts, you've just, say, got a huge wok and you're just cracking eggs in there and scrambling it, and everyone kind of gets the lunch lady sloppy Joe serving, hey, where it's just like the scoop it and plop and then go. Because everyone's on their own nutrition plan and everyone's got a certain amount of weight to lose. Are you calculating and measuring out each individual meal for that athlete as well?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the unique aspects of our program, right? And I didn't mention this in the beginning, but we've developed the most personalized sports-specific sports nutrition program to ever exist. So every single athlete gets their food personalized to their personal needs. And even though it may be the same, it may be eggs and romesco for breakfast for everybody, it's different because you may weigh 160 pounds and maybe fighting at 145. And so you need to go into, some protein sparing. Whereas let's say I'm 140 and I fight at 135, I can eat a little bit more, right? So I'm going to be giving myself, 113, 100, maybe 50 grams of eggs. So yeah, everybody's individualized, everybody's different. So that takes quite a bit of time of taking the container, weighing the food, putting it down. We have a good system. We have a good system that allow us to do it a lot faster, and we know the values when we see it. We have labels where we put the values for each athlete with their name. But nonetheless, it's a lot, and we had to be extra cautious, and we purchased these stickers for enhanced biosecurity, and we had to glue that on top of all of them. So there was an extra layer of detail that we needed to go through. So on top of everything else, there was that too.
Yeah, add it through. So Mario, obviously, as you said, Fight Island is still happening. It's still going ahead. You've got a bit of time off to figure out some other things with Trifecta at the moment. But
Yep.
going through that experience, what is it? What kind of change or what new perspective are you taking in when you go back to the UFC and you continue doing this? What's changing in your mindset when you're going to your next one?
I'm never complaining about cooking for 18 athletes again. It's like it's a walk in the park. That's what I've been telling everybody. It's um, again, because of the COVID situation, so much has changed already naturally. Like we've just enhanced our level of service even to the next degree. And the food has gotten a lot prettier. And it's kind of crazy to say, we've really one-upped ourselves, and that's very exciting. So just going into any other fight week that is not 2 fight weeks in one, it seems like so much simpler now. I guess when you go through a harder test, what used to be harder, what used to be something that was a big mountain, it's actually not. It's just a hill. So I don't know. It feels exciting to go back and just cook for 18 athletes. I feel like we'll be able to provide a much more detailed level of service, even though I just said that we've already done that. So I guess if we can do it for 55 athletes at once, we can definitely do it for 24.
Yeah, and that's something that's always impressed me, Mario, is that every fight week and every time I seem to check in with you, it's always getting better. The machine is always evolving, the service is always evolving, and it's really cool to see. Since the last time we spoke, what are some of those major things? What are some things that you've added into your service? What are some things that you've collaborated with other people and done this? What are the big moments that have been added to the service?
Yeah, well, I think the big one is we got Chef Skylar in. She brought a very fresh set of eyes after she understood and was trained on the program. She's really brought a lot of value to the table. And throughout this time, I've been building the program while executing it and while learning everything at the same time. So it's kind of like building the plane, flying it, and landing it, at the same time, making sure everything and everybody's all right. So to have somebody in my team is huge, because now there's two heads, and now there's a lot more time for us to innovate. So we've innovated in the post weigh-in aspect. We're creating new things, and getting, like, we're now providing lasagna for post weigh-in, and that's such a simple thing to do. But beforehand, I could not do it because of the level of work. We've innovated in snacks. We're using a lot more sort of like, we're taking every single ingredient that we've used, or every single sauce that we've used, to another level. So adding an extra layer of nutrition. For example, the best example I can give you is during fight day, we do the famous beet pancakes, right? The red velvet pancakes with Beet Elite. And now we've used tea, like matcha or moringa powder, which is another tea leaf powder, to make green pancakes. So now we have colorful pancakes. Or using spirulina, blue magic spirulina. It's a blue powder that's absolutely beautiful. We use that in the new snack, which is like a little cheesecake, but the cheesecake has no sugar. It's just high in fat, based on coconut, and the crust is some almonds or hazelnuts with protein. So things like that, we're really taking things up a notch. And then the compo that we use for those pancakes now has red reishi and lion's mane powder. So we're looking like we got really good at the macro, and so now we're looking at the micro, and how can we enhance what we've already done and make it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. So all those little 1%ers, hey, it's what we always talk about in elite level and high
Yep.
level sport. It's like, especially when you get to the guys who are fighting the next best guy in line. It's all those 1%ers, and it's awesome to see. Like I said, it's the evolution of the sport, and you guys are playing a big role in it. Mario, what else is happening? What's happening next year? You got a bit of time off. What else is going on? You mentioned that you got the blogs. Anything else happening that we should note right now?
Yeah, I mean, I just briefly mentioned it earlier. I'm starting a YouTube channel, so that's super exciting. The channel is going to have a lot of behind the scenes on what we do with the UFC. So if you're a UFC fan, definitely check me out. Mario Limaduran, just look it up on YouTube. And I'm going to be doing a lot of educational content, a lot of sort of utility, meaning I empower you to become a better cook at home. It's just going to be basic cooking skills, how to properly poach an egg, how to properly scramble eggs, how to properly cook rice, things like that. So that's going to, across the board, going to be my my approach to social media. I feel the need to teach people how to properly cook. What seems super simple and obvious to me, apparently it's not super simple and obvious to anybody else. So providing that value to the world is a calling that I felt for quite some time, and I'm acting on it. Aside from that, Trifecta is growing massively. We're going through a huge shift internally in Trifecta, and I can't really talk too much about that, but we got a lot of things going on here in the United States and in California, and adjusting to what COVID is, and the crazy situation that we're in. And aside from that, we're on the UFC aspect of things, for now, as of July 16th or for you 17th, we are going to Vegas for the next set of events. But who knows if that's going to be the case. COVID has really spiked in the United States, unfortunately. And especially in Nevada, it has been the best of cases. And so Nevada may get shut down. And, Dana has been talking about it. We may go back to Abu Dhabi. So we're just going to adjust and do the job. But, that's what the next 2 months are looking like.
Hey, just get it done by any means possible. I think that's the new saying for you guys. So Mario, if people want to go follow you on socials, they want to connect with you on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever, where can they find Chef Mario?
Yeah, so on Facebook, I just recently opened up a public page. It's at Chef Moss, and I gotta thank you, Jordy, for that nickname. Appreciate that. Or you can just look up Mario Limaduran, and my public page will come up. On Instagram, TikTok, Medium. I'm also writing a lot, or gonna start writing a lot. It's Mario Limaduran, my name, and also on YouTube, Mario Limaduran. I still haven't named my channel on YouTube, so that's to be determined. Apparently, I need 100 followers, so please help me get there first.
Yeah, that's it. So everyone who's listening in, go to YouTube now and subscribe and follow. And it's super cool. Like even your Medium articles, they're always so interesting to read. And I always find it so interesting. We look at things like this in Abu Dhabi and Fight Island, you just kind of see the end product. And I guess I'm in a unique position where I talk to you guys all the time, and it's just so crazy to hear what you guys go through to get that, the mountain of work that went in for us to kind of see the very tip, which is the end product. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I get to think about that. Like we're in such a unique position where in a pandemic, I'm traveling internationally, and I've gotten tested 12, 13 times, I think by now. And I feel, and I don't say this in a bragging way, but how lucky of a position I'm in order to be able to do this. And so, I feel a responsibility to showcase this and show people that, even though the fights are happening, and there's that entertainment, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes, and it's pretty cool. But at the same time, it's a lot of work. It doesn't come easy. It didn't come easy for anybody. Big shout out to Chef Skylar. She's currently killing it over in Fight Island. And Charles too. Charles has been just providing an excellent service, along with Clint. So yeah, it's exciting, man. The journey is exciting. So thank you so much for having me in your podcast and giving me a medium also to be able to talk about it.
Hey, anytime. We'll probably do it again really soon, I would say, Chef Maz. But mate, Absolutely. Thanks so much for taking the time coming on, and no doubt I'll be harassing you very soon.
Well, it was a pleasure, Jordy. Thank you.
Thanks, Chef.